A couple of weeks ago, dear friends of mine brought a particularly inspiring bottle to our usual blind tasting session, the first Welschriesling from the new venture of Christoph Polz. This wine simply blew me away, so I was eager to talk to the man behind this magnificent wine and hear his thoughts on Hochgrassnitzberg. This is the vineyard where he works in Styria, but of course also about the variety and his approach to winemaking. Christoph made the impression of a sincere, modest guy who admires fine details, heritage and exceptional quality overall. Even if the first part about the family story doesn't seem that interesting at first, I highly recommend you to hear him out, as it certainly lets you understand him and his wines in more depth. If you want to enjoy his wines, then hurry up, he didn't make one for everyone. Enjoy! Cool. So, Christoph Polz, thank you very much for taking the time. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
So we are sitting here at 10:30 we are having a beautiful breakfast already. And I got to know your wines through a good friend, actually. I was blown away basically because of this Welschriesling. I really wanted to talk to you because I think it's such a fascinating project, because you actually come from a very old and very traditional winemaking family in Styria, right? So can you tell a little bit about your story and how did you actually start with your own project?
So my first vintage in the family-driven winery was 2011, where I was responsible for the winemaking. After I studied enology in Vienna and had a stage in Burgundy. But I started working in 2011. And in 2020, my father and my uncle decided to split up the company parts. There were more parts in the winery. And during this whole big and intense process, I decided not to take over the whole winery on my own. It was too big for me after a lot of days, hours, and weeks of overthinking everything. And I decided not to take over the whole bigger winery. So that was the point where my brother came into the story, and he said, okay, he will run the winery, and if it's okay for me to stay in the cellar, do the cellar work, I said, okay, I can do cellar work, but at the same time, I want to also focus on my own vineyard. I work on 3.5 hectares vineyards, or 3.6 hectares of vineyards at the Hochgrassnitzberg. And I said, okay, I can do the cellar, but just the cellar, no presentations and stuff. And I want to do all the vineyard work on my own, as far as it goes. And I also use the cellar here. Just rent it in the own cellar where I work, and I do my small batch of wines in the cellar after working hour. Yeah.
And how was it for you? Because I think a lot of people maybe don't know it internationally, but Polz is really like a big name also in the Styrian wine world, but also in Austria, I would say. But how was it for you that you have this actually a big tradition and also a lot of vineyards? Probably you had at one point more than 100 hectares, right? The family.
Yes, that's what 110 hectares at the peak. Where we worked 110 hectares vineyards on our own, and we also bought some grapes from wineries nearby. Yeah.
Wow.
So all in all, it was around 130 hectares, which we worked in the cellar.
And how do you pick your favorite place if you want just to work on your own, or basically 2 or 3 hectares? How do you choose the best spot from 110 hectares?
It wasn't choosing. It was grown because 2.2 hectares I got from my father in 2016, but I sold the grapes to the winery. I had no idea of that I will ever work on the small part on my own, and not taking the big company. It was always okay. At some point, I will take the big company. And in 2018, I had the possibility to rent 1.4 hectares from my neighbor, which is pretty close to my directly next to my own vineyard. But I sold the grapes to the winery. And this also should be the long time. And 2020, it was the moment when my uncle and my father split it up. Then it was Corona. So a lot of time thinking about where you want to go, think about family. Everybody was at home, and sitting a lot in the vineyard, in the garden, and thinking, well, how should the next years work? So, and in this point, the Corona break was good for a lot of people to think, well, what we really want, where we want to go. And also for me, this was the time where I decided not to run the big company on my own, because I realized that I have a lot of fun working on small details in vineyard, in the cellar, and and that is the more interesting part in winemaking, or in wine especially. For me to really have a small part and try to get the best, which I define as best, out of it for myself. A lot of thinking, a lot of planning, and then trying to do the best out of the small lands I have.
This is the part in Hochgrassnitzberg. That's what you got from your father, then?
Yes. And apart from my neighbor, it's totally next to mine. So it wasn't the plan. It was just growing. And in 2020, I said, okay, I really like this part, and it's a really good part of Hochgrassnitzberg. Not that there is a really bad part at Hochgrassnitzberg, but on a hill you have always the top and the bottom. So it doesn't matter how good a vineyard is. In Styria, you have always a top and bottom, and in some parts the bottoms are better. Now you can say it in total. So like in really dry years, sometimes the lower part is better. Because you have more water in the soil, and not so
dry,
exposed as on the top. And in really wet and years with a lot of humidity, the higher parts are definitely better, more wind. And I'm pretty much at the top, so at the top to 60% down, so I don't have vineyard at the last 40% from the bottom.
That's why it's called also Hochgrassnitzberg, because I think it's also Grassnitzberg is also true, right? And Hoch is like high, if you don't speak German.
Exactly,
okay.
It's the high Grassnitzberg. It's a little higher than the Grassnitzberg, and it's a little different exposed. So you have the Hochgrassnitzberg goes from southeast, a small part south, and then southwest.
Okay.
And at the Grassnitzberg, you have pretty much east and the west side. There's no south side at the Grassnitzberg. And also you have more limestone at the Hochgrassnitzberg than at the Grassnitzberg.
And also in Styria, it's probably pretty important that you have a southern exposure, because it's a kind of humid climate, right? And it's also kind of cloudy, so you kind of need the sun.
Yes. And the mean nowadays it's a little better if you have a southeast, because you have the morning sun to dry up really early, and not the full heat at midday. So it's important, especially when you work organic, to get the humidity out of the vineyard, and it goes with wind and morning sun.
Cool. And because Styria, I think
especially for international listeners, I think Styria is maybe in the head as one terroir or one region. But as with Burgundy or as with other regions, of course, there are a lot of sub-regions. And I think also with Styria, it's more than true, I would say. So can you tell a little bit about the differences? What's maybe the difference between the southern part and also maybe the eastern part with a more volcanic soil maybe, or where you are located?
And Styria is a pretty small region, but you split it in Vulkanland Steiermark, Südsteiermark und Weststeiermark. So 3 parts. All in all, they're not big, but there are so many differences in the small regions. At the eastern part, you have much more of the volcanic stone base. So that's just the southern part of Styria, where you have 5 village places. It's called Kitzek-Sauser. It's the northern part, which is much more with schist. Then you have Gamlitz, the center part, with mainly sand.
Okay.
Then you have Ehrenhausen, where we are located. It's the most part of limestone. In Leutschach, it's the most south part. It's Oppok. It's Kalkmergel, if you know. And in the Eichberg region, you have gravel, and overall we have a lot of smaller hills. So the combination of height, steepness, soil, you get a lot of different terroirs in a small region. When I told about the 5 villages, it was the plan to combine as good as possible the terroirs, but it can happen that you have sand, limestone, and gravel in one hill. So this is it was a try to combine it to make it obvious to customers where the main terroirs are based, and that's
cool.
The customer, the idea of how Styria works, because it's you mentioned Burgundy. It's also not that big, but it's really hard to get to know every place, because it's also so small, structured like we are.
I've only been to Styria once. Unfortunately, I'm planning to go there again. Maybe also visit your vineyard. But I like to compare it more to Tuscany, actually, because in Tuscany you have a lot of hills and a lot of exposures. Like Burgundy is kind of very eastwardy, and it's a bit more easier maybe to grasp. But and you mentioned that you are basically in this eastern part where Ehrenhausen is, right?
Yes.
And what is the characteristic of these wines in general?
Mainly limestone-based vineyards, and if I compare it to the other villages, I would say it's pretty often that the wines from Ehrenhausen need a little more time than wines from Gamlitzer region or Eichberg, especially Sauvignon Blanc. It's a little more time in the cellar to show its full potential. It can have some deep tannins at the beginning, especially when it's young. But after 1-2 years, the finesse part of limestone comes out, and it's so often that it's getting bright. It tastes pretty easy at the end, so it's not a hard, voluminous. It gets bright, acidic, and ends really fine structured, not with full body. And when they are young, they can often end a little hard and rough. So you have to give them the time to show these the best worth of limestone. And for me, it's the acidic end of the wines when they got enough time in the cellar or bottle or barrel. Depends on your style and especially the variety. The Sauvignon needs really long, and Welschriesling, for example, doesn't need that much time.
And why is it? Why is it so?
I have no idea. It's pretty. I don't know, the combination of maybe tannins and and limestone seem pretty rough when they're young, even though when you don't have any skin contact. But yeah, needs more time. And when we taste a lot with colleagues, and when we taste the young wines from the Gamlitz area, they work after 1 year earlier. And
but it's also kind
of no problem
for sandy soil, right? So if you have more sandy kind of soil, then the wines are actually more fruity and more easily approachable in the use, right?
Yes. Also, limestone is pretty fruity, but the end often can seem pretty rough or not really ripe tannins. But yeah, you just, when you realize it once, you just have to give the time to wines. And I think there was also, if you compare it now and 5 years ago, it was also Corona where, everything settled down. It becomes really calm in the region. And in this time, a lot of wines had a later release date than before Corona, and not here, just a lot of colleagues. And I see how big advantage is now on all these wines. So at the family winery here, we the 22 Gebietsweine, also regional wines, were bottled, and in June we start to bottle the village wines from 21, and then the single vineyards, and then the 20 single vineyards. So
you have 20 single vineyards. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The last 120 single vineyards are bottled in June, July. And also for me, also the village wines from 21. So 1.5 years for the village wines. And when the region started with village, they often came after 6 months. So it was good, but now just with 1 year more in the cellar or in the bottle, with no work, just time, you get a much better result for me as a winemaker, and I think also for the customer to drink, because you have more pleasure with the bottle.
I can really confirm it, because we have now from the main winery, so to say, from the main Polz label, so to say, or the old Polz label, the Ehrenhausen, so the Ortswein, the village wine, it's the 19, and a lot of people actually, we have a lot of German guests also, and they, I think also as the Austrians, or we drink maybe white wines too young, I would say, and a lot of people say, 19, you couldn't sell it, that's why it's still on the list. But it's actually, man, it has now the capacity to show itself better, and also not only for single vineyards, but also, as you said, also for village wines, or also maybe also regional wines, because they have if it was a good year, I think 19 was also in Styria a very good year. Then they have a good concentration and great lengths, and they get the complexity what the wine deserves, maybe. Cool. So I actually have this Morillon in front of me, and I can't help but drink again. So maybe we can talk also a little bit about the Morillon, because you have now 2 wines actually, the Welschriesling and the Morillon, right?
Yes.
And how is it? Because Morillon, if you don't know, it's a Chardonnay. It's a local name for Chardonnay. And how is it working with this variety there in Styria?
So Morillon has a long tradition in Styria, as same as Sauvignon Blanc or Welschriesling. And so you find it pretty much all over Styria. And Morillon is Morillon or Chardonnay will grow pretty much everywhere. So it's not a really specific variety. I would say, oh, you definitely have to have this soils, and so if you throw a bunch of wines in anywhere, it will grow. But also it adapts the style from the terroir and also the winemaking, the cellar. But it adapts the style of the terroir pretty much. So it's pretty obvious if you taste Morillon from sand or from limestone or from schist. So it's a really good transporter for the soil, and I think that's also a reason why Morillon is pretty famous in Styria, because we have so many different combinations of terroir that you can have a lot of different styles of Morillon. And in my case, it's I have Morillon on limestone in the middle part of the vineyard or of the hill, so not totally exposed. Morillon comes out pretty early in the season, so there is a small chance of frost when you have it in the end of April. And if you have it, and if you work organic, and it's pretty much at the bottom with a lot of humidity, the chance of Peronospora is really high on the Morillon. But Morillon shows its at the amount of harvesting. It's in this case it's 3,500 kilos per hectare on this wine.
Wow.
Yeah, I would be happier if it's 4,500, but
yeah.
It is what it is. The last 2 years, since 2020, I work organic. So this year will be the first certified vintage, and it's a lot of limestone. It doesn't grow really powerful. So that was the average harvest of the last 2 years. Maybe it gets a little more the next years, but it's just information as if you work on high quality wines in Styria, especially also organic, where you can't have tons of grapes next to each other because you don't have any air inside. You're definitely under 5,000 kilo, I would say.
That's a small number of bottles. Unfortunately, also it's like 1,300 bottles. So it's, I hope that the next vintages were a bit more fortunate for you.
Yes. me too. Yeah. And the harvest at the beginning of October 2020. It fermented in 2 500-liter oak barrels, used oak barrels. After 1 year, so at the beginning of harvest 2021, I wrecked it the first time. During this year, there was no work, just topping up, no batonnage, no sulfuring, just topping up. Then I wrecked it, and it stayed in the stainless steel tank for another year. Then I wrecked it twice to get it clear, to separate the last fine lees, because I like to bottle the wines unfiltered, but at the same time I'm a fan of unfiltered and really clear wines in the glass. I really don't have a problem with dirty wines, but I try to have it clear in the glass. For me, it's a sign when you have unfiltered clear wines, it's a sign that the wine had enough time. You cannot make a clear unfiltered wine very fast, because you need time to settle again, and so that's my philosophy on this. And I bottled it August 22. And at the beginning of November, December, I started to show it to friends, some sommeliers, restaurants, and it started really, really slow. So there wasn't a big presentation with hundreds of people. So I just bottled it, labeled it. For the next vintages, I think I would go for 2.5 years. So 1 year barrel, 1 year tank, half year in the bottle. And so now, like February, March would be the perfect time for these wines to come. You have to understand, since I made the decision in 2020, where I said, okay, I won't run the big winery. I just worked on the wines and on in the cellar and in the vineyard, but I had nothing to show. So there were really long 2 years with talking to friends and colleagues that I'm working on stuff, but you can't see it or taste it. And in October last year, I said, okay, first vintage I start in December, because I really want to show it to people.
Cool. And because I have my own sensation about about the Welschriesling, I said it, I really liked it. I really like the Morillon as well. For me, it's when you said the word dirty, I would say that I really like also the wines which had like a pleasant dirtiness. It's kind of an like a kind of an uncontrolled way. It's not too fruity, but it has this kind of wild, kind of yeasty, kind of cellar character, or aromatic, or also especially in the nose. And I think this wine has it, that you can actually somehow smell a light oxidation, and maybe but also in the same time a light reduction, which is also very common to Burgundy. So you have this kind of very focused but still a kind of present cellular spice, I would say. And also in the mouth, like the Welschriesling guy, we tasted these wines blind, right? And I was like, wow. I was at the same time in Styria, but also in the Loire, also a little bit in Burgundy. And I was like, wow, like, what is it? And I never thought that Sarah brings actually a Welschriesling, which is that good, because maybe Welschriesling doesn't have the best image also in the German-speaking world, but we can talk about that later. But I think the Morillon is also showing like a very similar kind of character, which I also like. So because I also really like your labels, because these is a kind of a Burgundian labeling, right? Where you have actually the place as a main focus, and then the variety is actually smaller written. And these wines, although they are completely different varieties, show a very similar kind of character, which I really like in a winery.
I totally agree. So the style of both wines are pretty much the same idea. So my idea of wines or winemaking wines, it's not that I have a certain idea on a certain variety. For me, all in all, I like to produce and also drink wines which are when I taste it, I want to feel that they are well balanced, had enough time. I don't want to have the feeling that I hurt myself when I drink wine. So too much acidity, too hard oxidation. So when there's a specific part in a wine which is too loud, I don't feel that this is really harmonic. So I try to wait as long that the reductive phase in the cellar is gone. Then comes the oxidation, and when it comes to an end and it gets all the waves get smaller, then I think okay, now's the right time to sulfur it and or bottle it. I really try to have wines where I have the feeling, okay, this is one complex finished idea. And often it's really there's often a time in the cellar where it's a super reduction which tastes so it's a sexy reduction. It's, it smells like Burgundy, and the idea of now bottling because I want to keep this certain aroma. It's often that I think, I also like this part, but I know it will develop and it's not done yet. So, and on these wines, I feel like I got the good point where I said, okay, now the wines are done. For sure, they develop in the bottle and it will taste different in 5 or 10 years. But when I try these wines, and often I try it over 2 weeks, there's a really slight evolution of the wine. So it's not like this. And that's for me a sign that it will also age elegant and not like this.
And will not drop and then come again, but it's a constant kind of evolution.
It should be. Maybe it's totally different when we talk about in 2 years, but that's the thing with the first vintage. And when you talked about the label, it reminds on a Burgundy label, but actually it was I am not really sure if you can.
That was an old family label, right? I saw it on Instagram, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's a historic label for you, actually.
Yeah, from the house where I live now. That was the label from the vineyards where I work now. Yeah.
Wow, it's completely the same, or almost the same. Yeah.
It was just another owner name on it, but it's the same, the same font and the same. It's pretty. A lot of the.
Wow, that's good that you showed us.
From the
It's good that you showed us. Like this Morillon, I would say it has the same kind of taste as I already mentioned, and maybe also not really the taste, but the structure. As you also mentioned that you don't like these kind of wines when you have like one component of the wine which is sticking out. Really, my congratulations, because
thank you.
I think this has this kind of dancing kind of acidity, which I really like in a wine, which is not like a very aggressive acidity which attacks in the mouth and then like a Ferrari wine, basically it goes through your mouth, but it has this kind of dancing acidity which always comes back basically and carries the aromatic, but it's not overly fruity. So it has this kind of like kind of, I don't really want to use the word mineralic, but I would say the structure is very mineral, because it ends kind of, it doesn't end broadly, but it ends like when you want to take the next sip, it's like a little bit like a pleasant saltiness, and it ends like narrow, so to say, in the mouth, and it has this kind of quince, like kvita, like kind of this wild aromatics with a really pleasant kind of spice, but really the focus, I would say, is not on the aromatics, and it stays very long, basically stays in your mouth for a minute. Not only complex, but it's a very developing wine on the palate, which I think that is what we like, right?
Thanks for the words, and that's also a sign for me. It can be nice in the nose, but what really shows off the quality from a wine is for me how long does it develop in the palate, and if it stays for half a minute or a minute, so for me, all really, really good wines I tasted, there's no wine which is really short. So there's also a certain length in it. And
and also really great concentration. So it's not heavy, no sign of any heaviness. It has light, maybe light tannin, I would say, like a light Gerbstoff, like it stays, it has a pleasant weight, so to say, but it's really just to give a wine a certain texture which carries then, or which then stays basically in your mouth. but all components of the wines, like this acidity, like this texture, and the aromatics, everything is such a harmonious kind of flow in the mouth, I would say. And it's basically still a young wine, so it's 2020.
It is, yeah. I'm really looking forward to the evolution of this wine in the bottle.
And can you talk a little bit about these varieties? Because you talked about Morillon, but Welschriesling, it's a quiet late ripening variety, right? It's ripening later than Chardonnay. So, but it's basically the same vineyards, or is it like Welschriesling? It's a bit higher, right? As you mentioned.
Not the highest part is Sauvignon on the Hochgrassnitzberg for me. One part of Welschriesling is higher, and one part is pretty directly next to the Morillon.
Okay.
Welschriesling is ripening later. If we go back a few years, 30, 40 years, Welschriesling is still the most planted variety in Styria, I guess. And 40 years or 50 years ago, Welschriesling was good because you have Welschriesling can have a lot of grapes or a lot of crop. There's no potential of frosts. They're pretty rough in the vineyard. It's not growing too fast. You have always good acidity. Sugar doesn't explode like it's on Muscatella or on Sauvignon. And so my grandpa, they just had really big harvesting amounts, good acidity, which was important in these times. And so Welschriesling was just the easy drinking, low alcohol wine when you have lunch at the Buschenschank, so bread, sausages, so easy drinking wine. And this was made over decades, this style of Welschriesling. And so a few years ago, like 10 years ago, there was the idea of, okay, when there's now we have old wines where my I'm not just talking for me, also for colleagues, where our grandparents or our parents planted Welschriesling in the 80s on good vineyards, where we now know what are the really good vineyards. We also have old wines of Welschriesling. When they started, it just had young wines, so you can't have the greatest deepness in a wine with young wines. And so a few winemakers or producers start to see, okay, what can do Welschriesling also? And it was harvested riper, not too many kilos per wine, natural fermentation in barrels. And over the last years, there are more and more really good Welschrieslings are popping out. It's not that you have hundreds, but you have some or a good handful of producers which in Styria, which focused also on the Welschriesling a little bit more, and
also in southern Burgenland.
But there was the tradition. I think it was just in Styria where we held down the Welschriesling, like a lot of acidity, low sugar, and just easy drinking. When you go to the Burgenland or to Hungary, there was a little more way. Okay, sweet wine or more full-bodied Welschriesling. So it was just in. So it was a little different style. But now when you look like Rechnitz or Südburgenland, and there are also.
But do you think that Welschriesling was kind of a misunderstood variety in Styria, and now you basically placed maybe too much emphasis on Sauvignon Blanc? or other varieties, and now maybe it's time for Welschriesling to maybe, because as a more neutral variety than those varieties, maybe they can show the terroir better, and that's why maybe Morillon and Welschriesling may have a better future, or maybe have more focus.
There were a few questions. I think it wasn't misunderstood. It was just a different time. People, wine drinkers and producers in the 70s, there was another Aufgabenstellung, discipline to work on. They wanted easy drinking light wines, and the producers said, okay, which variety can do something this? Okay, Welschriesling. It was the sense of time. Now it definitely changes. What I see on the Welschriesling compared, for example, to Sauvignon Blanc is a really big advantage of Welschriesling is that it's ripened late, good acidity, and lower alcohol. And when you think over the next few years, when we have more extremes in the weather and especially the heat, Welschriesling has the possibility also in warmer years to have delightful, light, easy drinking, acidic wines. Just one point when you compare it to Morillon or Sauvignon, I'm not really sure how really complex the variety combined with the aging potential is. So when you have 30-year-old Sauvignons, Sauvignons from the 90s or 1990, 1991, it was mind-blowing if you get a really good bottle. And Welschriesling compared to Chardonnay or Sauvignon often does not have these deepness structure at the end or the length, for example, what Sauvignon can have. Sauvignon has more fruit, and some say, okay, fruit is totally out of time, we just want neutral varieties, but Sauvignon has definitely the potential to show the soils and to age well. And Welschriesling, I often complain it like it's the Styrian aligoté. It's easy drinking, it's light, but I'm not sure if it's that complex like a really good made Morillon. I really don't understand me wrong, I really love Welschriesling, and I'm also a fan, and I also will plant Welschriesling when I get rid of some other older wines. But from the complexity, from when you talk about great wines, the chance of a great wine is on, I think, on Chardonnay or Sauvignon, maybe a little higher than on Welschriesling, because at the end, I think it's a little part of the complexity where Welschriesling does not have the 100%. But it's a question: do we always need the high-end greatest wines? So I think a lot of people are so overdrunk of high-end wines that when you now get a Welschriesling like this, it's okay, easy to drink, not too overthought. So it's not you can just drink it. You have a well-balanced glass of wine, good acidity, and everything you want at this moment. And I think it's a sense of time what Welschriesling now is for wine drinkers, sommeliers, and producers, because good acidity, not too much fruit, really gentle, but maybe not the last complexity as other varieties.
But I heard that you have other varieties also in Hochgrassnitzberg. I heard about Riesling and Blaufränkisch. So can you tell a little bit about the future, maybe?
So when my father and my mother planted the vineyard Hochgrassnitzberg, they were not sure if they get more vineyards in the future or not, or does they just have this amount of vineyards. So my father said, okay, when we just do this amount, I have to have all varieties in this place. So I planted Welschriesling, or I also have Cabernet Sauvignon, on the
Okay.
Hochgrassnitzberg. And so now at the moment I try to figure out for for me and the vineyard and the future which varieties, which style makes sense for me now and in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So there's and in the meantime, I sold some varieties to the main winery, to my brother, especially at the beginning, where I said to my brother, okay, I don't need all the grapes. I also need a little money to wait as long as I want with the other wines. So I sold few varieties, but there's definitely Blaufränkisch coming. I'm just not sure when, but I have 20, 21, 22 in the cellar or in the barrel right now. And
Cool.
it's really, for me, the most interesting part working on some reds now, because on whites there's a certain experience now over the years, but on Blaufränkisch, and it's also everything planted in 87. So they're also 35 years old now. And I'm just, looking what is working, how, especially on the reds, and on Sauvignon and Riesling. I try to figure out which parts I like the most, which parts work different on which vintages, which style of vinification, which means bigger oak casks and stuff. I'm just doing a lot of thinking, tasting, and planning where the journey should go. For example, I'm pretty sure that Cabernet Sauvignon will not be my main variety in the next 5-10 years, but because it's always just getting ripe once in 10 years. But
maybe
so
it's good for
definitely...
rosé, you know. You have to keep up the cash flow. But maybe a smaller question about Blaufränkisch, and because you mentioned you worked in Burgundy, right?
Yeah.
At which houses?
No, I just worked at Domaine Rouleau in Meursault. So I basically worked on the whites.
Right. Okay.
Mainly, yeah.
Yeah, because I think the best Blaufränkisches are basically made by those who drink Pinot Noir, and that's why I was curious where you worked. But sorry, but because Blaufränkisch, I think it's a very yesterday, for example, I did a blind tasting for a group of guests, and we drank Obererwald, but 20, so it was really a baby mort. But we drank a Fneisel, so from Mitterburgerland, that was really like fat and very a mouthful. And then we drank a Spitzerberg from the Derlemur. So it was really 3 different kinds of school, but it was really like showing which kind of winner has this kind of Burgundian idea in the head, and what is maybe a bit more muscular, and maybe. But sorry to interrupt, but I think I'm really excited about the Blaufränkisch, because as you mentioned, you also have more experience with white wines, and that would be also probably the biggest project for you.
Yeah, and for me a lot of calling colleagues in Südburgenland and stuff to with a lot of questions, and also try different types of maturation, whole bunch, not whole bunch, everything is stamped. So it's pretty interesting for me to learn. Okay, how does Blaufränkisch work in our region? And so I like to wait 1 year longer to really find my way on a certain variety than just come because now it's just a good wine. So I really I want to wait, and everything what should come to the bottle should really work.
Yeah, cool. But it's also a kind of a luxury, right? Because you don't have this kind of time pressure to you have to bring out the wine, and
Yes, yes. That was also the reason why selling some grapes. And yeah, and still work here as a cellar master at the winery. But that was the main part for me, especially at the beginning. I don't want to really on the really good quality winemaking. I never thought of, okay, let's do the vineyard on my own and then bring the youngest unfinished wines. So that was never the plan. Yeah.
Cool. And sorry, I interrupted you. So you said also Blaufränkisch, and which other varieties do you have?
And Sauvignon Blanc. Just a little of a really small amount of Weißburgunder and the Riesling, but the Rhine Riesling at the moment I'm selling to my brother at the winery, and yeah, and the Cabernet Sauvignon, I will definitely get rid of the Cabernet, but I'm not sure if I'm just thinking about planting a new vineyard or leave the old wines and just put a different variety on it. Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm really
so
excited.
There's a lot of thinking and planning and tasting and looking and talking to people, and that's.
But now I just tasted the Welschriesling, and I think maybe I tell my idea about the differences, because as I already said, the structure is very similar, I would say. Welschriesling definitely has a more acidity, or like an acidic feeling for me, and very like this limey, citrusy, zesty kind of like herby, maybe a bit more herby, a bit more maybe greeniness. But for me, actually, maybe it's already in the use, but I would contradict what you said, because for me, Welschriesling, it has a more length for me than the Morillon, or maybe it's a bit more, I don't know, lingering, you know, this kind of vibrating kind of minerals. I don't really find the good verse for this, but it's kind of an electric kind of vibration in the finish, you know, which is very rarely found.
Yeah, for me, it's also especially on this vintage, the Welschriesling a little more crispy. So it's not hard, it's not acidic hard, but it's just it's
knackig.
Knackig, and refreshing,
crispy,
but not too young. And in this case, would just also would say that at the moment a little more length than the Morillon. Before I was just talking overall variety over an average of a lot of vintages. But for me at the moment, the Welschriesling is hitting pretty much all the parts I like on now drinking wine. So there's a acidic part, and that you want to taste again and again and again. So for me, it's a good sign when you drink, you talk over other stuff and think I can have more, and after the half bottle, you just, okay, what are we drinking? We're just drinking the whole time, and
it's dangerous. But this wine is hard to resist. I mean, also we were like the four of us, but I think that bottle was like in 15 minutes gone. It's really, but it's not a very light wine, so it has 15 alcohol, 13.5 alcohol. So it's also, but it doesn't feel like that actually.
The vintage 2020 does not really be the best example for low sugar and high acidity, because also the acidity is not too high on this for a Welschriesling. But it was harvested at the mid of October in 2020. Maybe I'm not sure how it would be 6 days earlier. But yeah, it is how it is what it is. The most important part is that it's not getting, that it still tastes acidic. It doesn't have to be on the at the number. The acidity shouldn't be high, but it should taste acidic and refreshing. And much more important is that you don't feel alcohol. So because that's the drinking killer when it's getting too alcoholic. It's not really good to drink. But in the 21 and then the 22, the alcohol is lower. So the 21 is lower and the 22 is also again lower. I picked it a little earlier, the two vintages afterwards, and I will see what 23 brings.
And when do you come out with the new vintage, with the 21?
I think it will get pretty hard to resist, but approximately in 1 year.
Okay.
But I just tasted it 2 days ago with Groß Michael, which was at the podcast.
Exactly.
I think we tasted just took the barrel samples and we tasted it together, and I really liked it. And it's hard when you like your wines and you know, okay, you should wait a year that it gets really better. But that's the plan. So maybe pretty much in 1 year. So then after 2.5 years, 1 year barrel, 1 year tank, half year bottle.
Do you also come out with the Sauvignon in 1 year?
So there's, I'm not sure. We also tasted all the Sauvignons on Monday, but the earliest part for the Sauvignon for the 20 will be around autumn.
Okay.
So October, yeah. But there's the 2020 still left, and which is at the moment the stainless steel and tasting.
And how was the vintage variation between 20 and 21 in Styria?
20 was a little warmer, a little less acidic. The amount was, the crop was pretty okay, but I think all in all the quality in the region of 21 is a little higher than on 22. But since there wasn't really a bad vintage the last years, when you go back to 16 with the frost, 14 with hard ripeness, a lot of rainfall. So it was 18, 19, 20, 21, they were all good harvest, good vintages, but in a different style. So the 20s were just, they never were hard, they were always gentle to drink, but the 21 are a little more acidic, a little, there's more pureness in the 21s, I guess. And the 20s are, really, they're not complicated, the 20s. And the 21 is, more acidic, a little more complex, I guess. And less alcohol and a little higher acidity.
Wow, that is gute Werbung. I can't wait for the 21 really then. Because I think as a first vintage from obviously you didn't start making wine in 2020, but I think as a first vintage from a young winery or from a young label, it's pretty mesmerizing, really. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. And I would have one more question maybe. What is your final idea for you or for your wines? What do you want to accomplish? Maybe you want to grow in size, or you want to work with other varieties, or what's do you have like maybe a main idea, a main goal in 10 years or something?
At the moment the idea would be to, because I have the advantage with just work on old wines. So the youngest wines I work on 24 years old, so it's no totally young wines. And the oldest one are 36 now. Or the main part is 36 now. For me, the main goal is to get to know my small piece of land, so the 3.6 hectares, to get to know them as good as possible, to know exactly where I can get which quality and when, because I think in the detail I can get out much more than I do now. So I think I'm pretty sure there's there should be a evolution in quality over the next years, because in the cellar I have over the years now I have a idea in the cellar what is needed to make a complex wine. I like, so okay, this part is, I have a solid idea. Now it's the working in the vineyard to and also to bring everything in bottle from my own vineyard. So all in all, there's a possibility to make around 10,000 bottles a year from my vineyards. And if so I want to grow in idea and in my wines, but I have no idea in 3 years when I get offered high-end vineyard, I would not say never. No. But the plan is I just want to surround myself with a good quality handwork, and so when there's a vineyard, there has to really be a really good potential. So it's not about the kilos, it's about the quality. And when I really bottle the 10,000 bottles, they also have to be sold. But that would be the next goal for the next 5-10 years.
Well, with the last part, I can happily help you if you sell those at the gastronomy. I'm gonna be an ambassador for your wine. So.
Thank you. It's good to hear.
Yeah. Super, Christoph. Would you like to add something more?
I think I pretty told everything I have to, and
Cool. Because we can also talk maybe when you bring out the next wines. We can also talk about maybe the Sauvignon and the Blaufränkisch. That would be nice.
I will give you definitely information when.
Cool. Thank you very much, Christoph. Really, it was very an intimate look into your, I think, also into your winemaking and into your thoughts process. And the wines are amazing. So good luck.
Thank you for the invitation, and all the best.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
I hope you've liked this episode and gonna follow this guy through his vintner journey in the next decades as well. If you like this style of vintner brain picking, please leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or just follow the Wine Ghosts on Instagram for more wine adventures. It helps me a lot as well. Thanks, and be the Wine Ghosts be with you.